It was the kind of October night that seemed endless, the kind where the city held its breath beneath a dark, restless sky. The streets of New York were mostly quiet, the usual rhythm softened by the early hours of morning. Streetlights flickered against wet asphalt, and the air carried the faint smell of rain and metal. I remember lying in bed, between sleep and wakefulness, listening to the hum of the radiator and the slow, even breathing of my wife beside me. Our two daughters, Emily and Sarah, slept in the next room. Emily, 10 years old, always curling up with her sketchbook. Sarah, barely 4, clutching her stuffed rabbit as though it could keep all the monsters away. It was 3:42 a.m. when the first tremor hit. At first I thought it was a truck, maybe one of those heavy ones that make the windows shake when they pass too close. But then the floor rolled beneath us, a low, unnatural growl rising from the ground. The closet door rattled, the picture frames on the wall began to sway, and the sound, that deep, rumbling roar, seemed to come from everywhere. My wife shot up in bed. "Michael, what's happening?" she gasped. Before I could answer, the lamp crashed to the floor. The entire apartment groaned, as if the walls themselves were alive and afraid. The bed shifted, books fell from the shelf. I stumbled out, my heart slamming in my chest, and ran for the girls' room. Emily was already awake, clutching Sarah's hand, eyes wide with confusion and terror. "Daddy, the floor's moving!" she screamed. "Get under the doorway, now!" I shouted, pulling them close. The hallway lights flickered out, plunging everything into darkness. The building was old, one of those brownstones that had seen 100 winters, and I could feel it trembling, crying out beneath the force of the quake. Then came the second jolt, harder, longer. Dishes shattered in the kitchen, glass breaking somewhere near the window. We huddled beneath the frame of the door. The 4 of us pressed together, the air filled with dust and the metallic taste of fear. Outside I could hear screams, someone yelling a name. A car alarm went off, then another. The city that never sleeps, was suddenly wide awake, terrified. For what felt like an eternity, the ground kept shaking. I could hear sirens already, far away, cutting through the chaos. My wife was crying silently, holding Sarah so tightly that the little girl could barely breathe. Emily buried her face in my chest, whispering, "Danny, make it stop, please, make it stop." And then, just as suddenly as it began, silence. Not peace, the silence that follows disaster. The kind that feels heavy, like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what remains. We stayed there for another few minutes, afraid to move. I could hear dripping water somewhere and the faint crackle of something breaking in the distance. When I finally dared to stand, I looked out the window. The skyline that had always seemed so eternal now looked wounded. A few blocks away, I saw smoke rising. The red glow of fire danced against the darkness. "Is it over?" my wife whispered. "I think so," though I wasn't sure. By dawn, the city was unrecognizable. Streets were cracked, traffic lights dangling uselessly from bent poles, storefronts shattered. People wandered the sidewalks wrapped in blankets, some barefoot, some bleeding. A mother pushed a stroller through a pile of broken glass, whispering softly to her baby, though her own face was pale with shock. I had never seen New York like that. The city that had always felt indestructible, brought to its knees. Our apartment had survived, though the kitchen was a mess of broken cups and plates. We were lucky. News reports said parts of Brooklyn were badly hit. Bridges were being inspected, subway tunnels closed, and still, there were aftershocks, small tremors that made every heart skip a beat. Around 7, the girls began to cry, not out of fear this time, but hunger. The refrigerator had been unplugged since the power went out, and we were running out of milk. My wife, exhausted, looked at me and said softly, "Could you go see if any of the corner stores are open, just to get some milk for them?" I nodded, kissed her forehead, and slipped on my coat. The streets outside were eerily quiet. The cold morning light made everything look even more fragile. Pieces of concrete littered the sidewalk. and a police officer stood at the corner directing people away from a collapsed wall. As I walked toward the small market on 3rd Avenue, I heard it, faint at first, then again, a broken sound between the sirens and the wind. Meow. It came from the left side of the street near an old apartment building whose fence had partly collapsed. I stopped, scanning the area. The noise came again, this time weaker, a trembling little cry but carried pain. I stepped closer, and that's when I saw her. A gray cat, wedged between the bent iron bars of the building's gate. Her fur was dusty, tangled, streaked with blood near her belly. Her eyes, wide, glazed, pleading, met mine for a second before she let out another soft, broken meow. "Oh God," I whispered, kneeling down. She must have been caught during the quake, thrown into the railing somehow when the ground shifted. The metal bars were twisted around her, cutting into her skin. She tried to move, but her body was too weak. "It's okay, girl," I said quietly, my hands shaking as I tried to pull the bars apart. The iron was cold and rigid. My fingers slipped against it. The cat whimpered, a heartbreaking little sound that made my chest tighten. I looked around. No one else in sight. Just me, this shattered street, and the small, trembling creature trapped between life and death. I pressed my shoulder against the railing and pulled with everything I had. The metal groaned. 1 inch, 2, enough for her to slide through if I could just. She let out a cry of pain, but I managed to lift her free. Her body was limp in my arms, warm and trembling. I could feel her heartbeat, fast, frantic, but still there, still fighting. I wrapped her gently in my scarf and held her close. "You're okay now. I've got you. I'm safe." I ran the rest of the way to the nearest veterinary clinic, miraculously still open, lights flickering on emergency power. The vet, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes, rushed over the moment she saw the blood. "What happened?" I said, catching my breath. "Found her trapped in some railings. She's hurt bad." They took the cat from my arms and disappeared into the back room. I stood there, hands covered in dust, watching the door close, feeling an ache in my chest that had nothing to do with exhaustion. For the first time that morning, I felt something deeper than fear. I felt the need to save something. Anything. The city could rebuild. Walls could be fixed, roads repaved. But that small, broken creature? She needed someone now. I don't know how long I waited. Time had stopped meaning anything that day. I just sat there in the small clinic's waiting room, surrounded by the hum of generators and the soft, rhythmic beeping of machines from behind the closed doors. Every few minutes I'd hear muffled voices, the vet giving instructions, the clatter of metal trays, the occasional cry of another frightened animal brought in from the ruins. The receptionist, a young man with a cast on his arm, handed me a bottle of water. "You did the right thing bringing her in," he said quietly. "A lot of people, they just walk past." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words felt heavy in my throat. Outside the window, the morning light was growing brighter, revealing more of the city's wounds. Fallen bricks, shattered windows, a street lamp bent in half. Yet somehow the air felt softer now, as if the chaos had burned itself out, leaving behind only the ache of survival. When the vet finally came out, she looked exhausted but calm. She took off her gloves and smiled faintly. "She's going to make it," she said. For a second, I couldn't believe her. "Really?" "She's lost a lot of blood, but the wound wasn't deep enough to damage the organs. We cleaned it, stitched it, and she's stable now. She'll need a few days of rest, antibiotics, food, warmth, but she's a fighter." I felt my shoulders sag with relief. My chest loosened for the first time since the quake began. "Thank you," I whispered. The vet smiled again, this time softer. "You said you found her alone?" "Yeah, between some iron railings. She was just stuck there." She nodded, eyes thoughtful. Poor thing. Probably had a home once. You can tell from her coat, or what's left of it. Someone loved her. I didn't know why, but those words pierced deeper than I expected. Someone loved her. Maybe that was what made the difference. Maybe love, even when forgotten, still leaves traces strong enough to keep you alive. When I returned home, the girls were waiting by the window. Emily ran to me the second I opened the door. "Daddy, you're okay!" she shouted, wrapping her arms around me. Sarah followed, her little feet padding against the floor, her stuffed rabbit dragging behind her. My wife appeared behind them, relief etched across her tired face. "Did you find anything open?" she asked. "Not much, but I found someone," I said, setting down a small carton of milk. The girls blinked up at me in confusion. "Someone?" Emily asked. I smiled faintly. "A cat. She was hurt. I took her to the vet. She's gonna be fine." Sarah's eyes lit up. "A kitty?" "Yeah," I said softly. "A gray one." My wife stepped closer, concern mixing with surprise. "You helped an animal? In all this?" I nodded. I couldn't just leave her there. She was trapped. She looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. Tired, but proud. "That's so like you." Over the next few days, the city began to recover, slowly, unevenly, but with the same stubborn willpower that has always defined New York. Crews cleared the debris, emergency shelters opened, and neighbors helped each other in ways I'd never seen before. People shared food, blankets, stories. Even in disaster, humanity found a way to show up. And amid that chaos, I kept thinking of the gray cat. The clinic called me 2 days later. "She's ready to be discharged," the vet said. "Still weak, but healing fast." When I arrived, the cat was lying in a small cage, her belly neatly bandaged, her fur cleaner now, though thin in spots. Her eyes, soft green like wet leaves, followed me as I approached. "She remembers you," the vet said with a grin. Started purring when I mentioned the man who brought her in. I knelt beside the cage. "Hey there, sweetheart," I whispered. "You're looking better." She blinked slowly, then let out the faintest purr. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I brought her home that evening. The girls couldn't barely contain their excitement. Sarah squealed the moment she saw the carrier. "Kitty, kitty!" Emily knelt beside her, eyes wide with wonder. "Can we keep her?" she asked. I glanced at my wife, who smiled and shrugged. "After what she's been through, I think she's earned a home." And just like that, our family grew by one. The girls named her Luna because, as Emily explained, she survived the night like the moon. For the first few days, Luna barely moved. She spent most of her time curled up in the blanket near the radiator, eyes half closed, breathing slow. But she wasn't afraid, just tired. Sometimes when I'd sit beside her with a cup of coffee, she'd open her eyes and look at me in that knowing way animals do, as if saying, "You and I both made it through something, didn't we?" A week later, the city lights were back, trains ran again, restaurants reopened, and the constant noise of life returned, though never quite the same. There was a fragility beneath it all, like the city now carried an invisible scar. One evening, I was watching the news while Emily drew pictures of Luna and Sarah built towers with her blocks. The anchor spoke about the recovery efforts, the engineers inspecting buildings, and the thousands who had helped each other that night. My wife looked up from the stove and said quietly, "It's strange, isn't it? How fast everything changes. Yesterday people were strangers. Now everyone's connected." I nodded. "Sometimes it takes everything falling apart for us to see what really matters." She smiled. "Like Luna?" "Exactly like Luna." That evening, after the girls were asleep, I went out to the balcony. The city glimmered beneath the October moon, still imperfect, still cracked, but alive. I thought about that first moment, the shaking, the fear, the helplessness. And then I thought of the small, broken cat, trapped and bleeding, fighting to stay alive in the same chaos we all were. Maybe we weren't so different. Maybe in the end, survival isn't just about strength. It's about kindness, about seeing something fragile and choosing not to walk away. Behind me, Luna padded softly to my side, brushing against my leg. I lifted her into my arms, and she purred, her body warm against my chest. Looking out over the city, I whispered, "We're still here, aren't we, girl?" Her tail flicked once, slow and calm. A few weeks later, the girls made a small sign and taped it above Luna's bed. In childish handwriting, it read, "She was lost. Now she's home." Every time I looked at it, I felt something shift inside me, something I hadn't even realized was broken. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? Not just for Luna, not just for us, for the whole city. We were all lost that night, all trapped somewhere between fear and hope. But somehow through small acts, through holding on to each other, through saving one fragile life, we found our way home again. And maybe that's what it means to be human. To keep saving what's left, even when everything seems lost. To keep believing that love in any form can still rise from the rubble. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in what we build, but in what we choose to protect when the world falls apart.